you royals, rebels, and romantics out there, and welcome to our final summer special of 2025. As we lean into the end of summer, those final lazy days and warmer nights. I know it's already starting to get a little bit of a chill in the DC area here, but it is still summer. And so I thought it would be great if we just had a little chat about some final summer reading that we might be able to do together. And I wanted to let you know about a couple of Elizabethan murder mysteries from two different Elizabethan eras. So I thought that would be fun. So, welcome to all of you listeners. I do, as always, want to give a huge shout out and thank you to my patrons. You just don't know how much your support means. You literally make this podcast possible. I love doing it, but it does take quite a bit of time and energy and research and technology. I am not the most tech wizardy person ever. So I am so grateful to you for your support. I cannot thank you enough. And there's some real fun ahead in season 6. So if you're not a patron yet, you may want to think about that. In any case, for this episode, I wanted to talk about our two queens named Elizabeth I, the final Tudor queen from 1558 to 1603. That Queen Elizabeth lived in a time of exploration and a glittering crown and music and theater, and also plague and fear of invasion from France and especially Spain, of internal and external religious chaos and turmoil and persecution and prosecution. It was a time of poverty, disease, death. So under the glittering exterior, there was a whole underworld. It was also a time of spies. And that's the world we will enter when I talk about those mysteries. The time of Queen Elizabeth II we'll get to in a moment. We've just very recently ended that. But that was the time with a monarch who began just after World War II. Her reign began just after World War II in 1952. And so there's the post-war rebuilding. And then the 60s, there were world conflicts, weddings and divorces, not only on the world stage, but also in the royal family. And there were multiple prime ministers for Queen Elizabeth II and also a worldwide pandemic. So both queens named Elizabeth, both of our Queen Elizabeths, had really spectacular, in a lot of ways, challenging, exciting, history changing, or at least shaping reigns. And both of them, it turns out, are prime landscape for murder mysteries. So I will begin with Suzanne Wolfe, A Murder by Any Name. And this takes place in the reign of Elizabeth I. Now, anytime you invite me into the reign of Elizabeth I, you know I'm really excited about that. But this is especially fascinating to me because some of the background characters we have rumbling around in this mystery include Mary, Queen of Scots, Francis Walsingham, William Cecil, and his son, Robert Cecil. So it's that whole spies, ciphers, all of that intrigue is going on. And that's a time I really love. It is just so fascinating. There are so many dangers and dark secrets and little hidden messages all around. And it's a very exciting, frightening, truly dangerous time. We also meet in the sidelines of this story. There are some wonderful references to a young lad who's very interested in the theater, Will Shakespeare, who seems quite determined to expand his presence in London, wink, wink. And we also on the sidelines meet Christopher Marlowe, who is accused of not only being involved in the theater, but also being a spy. I thought that was really fascinating because among these characters that we do know from history, that's where Wolfe places her characters. We get quite a bit of language and actions from Queen Elizabeth I that are pretty carefully researched to fit into the time. The only objection I did have, I will say, there's sort of a turning aside or a pretty direct criticism among some people for Queen Elizabeth I only bathing once a month. Well, in fact, it was thought she did bathe once a month, but in her time, people thought it was way too often. They did not think it wasn't often enough. So that's a bit off, but so many other details are just right. The name Robert Dudley continues to sort of weave through the mysteries, and there are references to taverns and brothels as well as court life. So we meet some of Wolfe's characters here. Her main character, the detective who becomes a detective, is the Honorable Nicholas Holt. He is actually not only the owner of the Black Sheep Tavern, but also a spy. He is recruited by Walsingham and Cecil, and he is working as a spy. He has friends, John and Maggie Stockton, Maddie, Cat. Cat is the madam of a brothel. She was abused as a young woman when she decided to take on a particular profession. And so she bought out the business and sort of took it over herself and takes very good care of the, let's just say, the women who work for her. So she's fascinating, and Nick hangs out with her all the time for various reasons. The other friends of his that are very important are Eli, who's a Jewish doctor, and Rivka, who's his sister, who's just as good a doctor, but of course, because she's a woman, was not allowed to do any training. Now, as Jews, these two characters are really under the hot spotlight in this time in Elizabethan England because the Jews have been expelled. And so they have to keep their identities very close and quiet. And of course, there is some humor, especially there's a fool by the name of Codpiece. I thought that was pretty funny. And Hector, who is Nick's lovable and very reliable Irish wolfhound, and he plays a big role in these stories as well. So it's great. Now, this is the description I found that really got me. Gotta read this book, gotta read this book. A deeply atmospheric and richly textured Elizabethan mystery. I love that idea of deeply atmospheric and richly textured. And I did find this to be the case. When the characters are crossing London Bridge, they decide to just walk across it one time. And it is just described in exactly the kind of chaos that London Bridge really would have had at that time. People are just squished together. In fact, these two characters are walking side by side, and there's barely room for them. But thanks to that large Irish wolfhound, room is made for them. He sort of goes ahead. We see the difference in social status in different characters. They are able to live an almost entirely different life. Those in the upper end of society and those on the lower end, they really live, and the characters and the details of their lives are given to us. We see the dangers of travel at night when you can come upon someone without knowing who they are, and there are attempted stabbings and someone tries to fire a crossbow, and all these kinds of things are going on. And we also get the feel of a raucous pub at mealtime. So we get all of these ideas, all of these spaces, all of these characters, and we can see the religious terrorism that's going on, the way the Jews are blamed for everything just automatically. When there is a murder, and that's what we're here for, murder mysteries, it's got to be one of the Jews. It's got to be the Jews. It's got to be the Jews. And so those characters who we see as friends of Nick, such good friends. In fact, they saved his life at one point. And so these are very good people that are pushed aside and blamed and scapegoated for anything that goes wrong. And we also see the Catholics. Now, by this point in Elizabethan England, Catholicism, practicing Catholicism. So Catholics themselves are illegal. It is illegal to not be a member of the Church of England. And Nick himself has some family members and possibly himself who are associated with Catholics, and he's trying to sort of tamp down those associations. So all of this is going on in the world around this murder mystery. And so I think that's the idea of it being so richly textured and atmospheric, because the world is going on and the mystery happens and they're just kind of competing with each other for our attention. We're in the middle of all of it, and it's wonderful. So the murder, the first murder, happens very quickly. So there's none of that sort of cozy lead up where you get to know people really well. And then one of them, you think, oh, this is a fun character. In fact, my thought was, as I was reading the beginning, I bet that character is the one who will stumble upon a body. Well, actually, that character became the body, became the first murder victim. And so they're unexpected victims. And that's really interesting, because part of the mystery that Nick has to solve is why these women? Because they are ladies in waiting to Queen Elizabeth herself. So she turns to Nick and puts a bit of royal pressure on him to solve the murders. Because if someone out there is close enough to the royal household to be murdering ladies in waiting, for one thing, that means the Queen's life is in danger. But another thing it means is the Queen is not even able to keep her own household safe, which makes her appear rather weak on the throne. And since with that religious turmoil and Mary, Queen of Scots, a younger woman right there is a ready replacement, the idea that Elizabeth is not keeping control of her household, is not able to protect her own household, does interfere with her being able to project this royal image and this idea that she is in control. And so Walsingham and Cecil are working to think about and figure out what's going on, but it's really Nick that the Queen trusts with this job. And so I'm not going to give everything away. I will tell you there are a couple of murders. They're not overly grisly, but they are certainly grisly murders. They are young women in the Queen's court. And so it is sort of a shocking whole kind of thing. So you'll be happy to know that A Murder by Any Name already has, if you love that, there is a second Elizabethan mystery. Take my sticky note off. The Course of All Treasons. And so you can jump right in to the second novel in this. So that is one side of our murder mystery discussion. That is in the court of Elizabeth I. So let's zoom forward in history to the time of Elizabeth II. And this series I found just to be hilarious. It's a fascinating and funny take on what happens behind castle doors. Now, if you know me, you know I cannot go into Waterstones without buying myself something, maybe more than one something, usually quite a few books. But in any case, this was a time I thought I want something, a fun treat for the plane ride home. I just want to be able to sort of kick back. If I'm in Waterstones, that means I'm in England. So when I'm on that plane home, I'm going to be sad. So I need something fun. And that's what brought me to the Windsor Knot. And you'll see this is Her Majesty the Queen Investigates. This was a series by S.J. Bennett. And I thought, okay, what do you mean, Her Majesty the Queen investigates? Well, yes, this is a version of Queen Elizabeth II that you have never seen. Not only does it take place within her court, but the Queen herself is a detective. She is the one who solves the mystery. And when a guest at a quote, dine and sleep at Windsor Castle. So this really sounds real. You can imagine people are invited to a grand dinner at the castle and various famous people, and they go through the list of the people that are invited. And it's sort of a tribute to then Prince Charles and the Duchess of Cornwall, Camilla, and they're having this lovely dinner. And then the guests are invited to spend the night. And overnight, one of the guests is very surprisingly murdered. And so the next morning, when she sees and hears what's happening and all of this chaos, and there's a bit of a scandal, it's not a grisly murder. It is a murder, but it is not a grisly murder like in the first series. But the queen decides this has to be wrapped up right away. The officials come, the official investigators do come, but the queen is on the case as well. Now, one of the things that's really fun in this book, and I'll talk about the others in the series, but that's really fun in this book is that as the murder is being investigated, unlike the previous series, in this series, whoopsie, in this series, Nick is spending all his time investigating the murder. He is interviewing people. He is tracking down clues. And that's what we usually expect with a murder mystery. Our detective, yeah, they may have some other things going on, but they are the ones interviewing, investigating. Well, the queen has to spend most of her time being the queen. So she does a lot of things we're familiar with. She is horseback riding. She is meeting with people. She is holding openings. She is doing all the things we think of when we think of the royal family. She is not the one interviewing suspects or interviewing the other guests who were there, but she, alongside with her assistant detective, are actually looking again, thinking again, overhearing maybe a little bit here and there about the way people are investigating. And so she's listening in, eavesdropping just a little bit or wanting to see the murder scene on her own. And of course, all the officials say, oh, no, no, Your Majesty. So she goes back when no one knows. And Rosie, her assistant private secretary and security officer, is there working with her and actually has to do a lot of the legwork for her. So the queen can appear to be uninvolved and above it all. But there is this notion threading through the book that back in the war, back during World War II, when we know in reality the queen was involved with the military and actually was a driver and a mechanic and could do all kinds of things we perhaps don't associate with royalty, that sparked. And for years, the queen has had this secret ability to really do some detective work. So anyway, the other thing I found really interesting about this novel was rather than setting it back maybe in the 80s or in the 90s when the queen was a bit younger, it actually begins almost in real time. It's quite a contemporary feel. The queen has just celebrated her 90th birthday as the story unfolds. And so it shows how lively and active Her Majesty the Queen was until the very, very end. And I'll mention that in just a minute. So this certainly is what would be called a cozy murder mystery. Now, it seems odd to think of a cozy murder mystery, but it is. It's very humorous. There is a murder, yes, but it's not grisly. There's just the one, and it's more sort of thought-provoking than a tragic kind of murder. And there's no exploration of sort of the seedy underworld that we get with the Elizabeth I murder mystery. So this is sort of all very sort of calm. And then just the queen, she's such an observer of people and of activities and of spaces that she is able to notice something or have a question about something and then just very casually mention to the official investigators. and in a way that they think it is their own idea. And so then they take it and run with it and are able to solve the mystery, but only with her help. Now, Prince Philip, the Duke of Edinburgh, is in this #1 novel, and S.J. Bennett has now written 5 novels in this series, Her Majesty the Queen Investigates. And of course, one of the things you face when you were writing a contemporary or near contemporary thing about famous people is sometimes the famous people pass away. And so I wanted to just read a couple of notes from the author that are tributes to these 2 royals. Prince Philip passes away, and this is what's written about him. And this is for the second book, A 3-Dog Problem. And she says, quote, "This book was written before the death of Prince Philip on April 9th, 2021, at the age of 99. It is dedicated to him with affection and respect for a life well lived, and not a little nervousness. Would he have laughed and chucked it across the room with an exasperated grin? I hope he would." Now, as the series continues, of course, at the end of book 3, Murder Most Royal, it begins with this, the dedication. Elizabeth II, 1926 to 2022. This book is dedicated to the Queen with much love and gratitude. And in the world of S.J. Bennett, although the book is dedicated to the Queen in book 3, books 4 and 5 still come out with a very affectionate idea of what Her Majesty the Queen might continue to be doing with her sparkling wit and her eye for detail and imagination. So as we come to the end of summer, I just thought it would be fun to do a little mini pod with some summer murder mysteries. And I will just say, I'm recording this on the 27th. I'm going to post it tomorrow on the 28th of August. It'll be live. And of course, the 28th of August is also the date, in addition to being my wedding anniversary, it is also the date, if you are a fan of Richard Osman's The Thursday Murder Club, speaking of murder mysteries, and the Netflix version of that is going to be come out on the 28th of August. So a lot of fun murders. I encourage you to read those books as well. I wouldn't consider them historic murder mysteries, but they are loads of fun. And I feel like we could all use a little fun mystery in our lives right now. So again, thank you so much as we come to the end of our summer and to the end of season 5. Can you believe it? Some of you I know have been with me from the beginning. Thank you so much. Again, thank you to the patrons that have been with me and sent me love and support over the years. We will start season 6 in September. I have so many fun things planned, and I can't wait to have you join me again as we look at all of these royals, rebels, and romantics and explore the way, and I think we're seeing that more than ever, the way that history shows us what's possible. Thank you so much, and I'll see you again soon.